It is a pleasure to have with us the first general manager of the new NHL team in Seattle, Ron Francis. Ron, first of all, before we get into the Ron Francis story, tell me a little bit about what it's been like for you so far here.
It's been a little bit of a whirlwind getting in town Tuesday night and kind of get a little bit of a tour around town with my family, seeing the Space Needle and Kerry Park and stuff like that. And then the whole day yesterday with the press conference and media. But interesting event last night too at the beer hall, getting to spend some time with some of the fans and confirm what I already thought. They're extremely passionate about the game of hockey and about the team here, and it's an exciting project that we're embarking on.
All right, I want to take you back because here you are, so much further into your career, 23 years in the NHL, but you got your start at 18 years old in an NHL game. Tell me what it was like.
It was crazy. I think you're, as every young kid, you dream about getting that opportunity, and I get drafted. I went to training camp. They sent me back to juniors. I was leading, actually, I think the league at the time I got called up in juniors. And we happened to be on a road trip. My hometown was in Northern Ontario. We left on Wednesday, drove all day, played Thursday, played Friday. And after the game, the GM was there and said, hey, we're calling you up to Hartford to play a game. So jumped in the car with him. We drove to Buffalo, spent the night there, flew the next day into Hartford, played a game Saturday night, turned around, drove back to the airport, flew to Toronto. Scout picked me up, took me to Kitchener, played an afternoon game, turned around, went back to Hartford for a 3-game tryout and stayed up the rest of the way. But absolutely incredible when you get to put on that jersey and step out on the ice for the first time in an NHL game. It's an accomplishment of what you dreamed of as a kid, and it's very special.
Well, especially at 18.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of guys wait a long time to put that jersey on.
Well, no question. And in dating myself here, but there was no cell phones back then in 1981. So when I got to Buffalo, I actually called home to my mom and dad, and I said, did you hear? And they said, yeah, you guys, had a good game. You didn't win. I said, no, I'm in Buffalo. And they said, what the heck are you doing in Buffalo? I said, well, I'm going to Hartford to play tomorrow night. So, one of the first purchases was a big satellite dish so my mom and dad could at least watch all the games on TV.
Yeah, because you grew up in Ontario, Canada. Yeah. So, when was the first chance for them to come and see you play? Like, they couldn't just obviously jump on and see your debut, right?
Yeah, no, they couldn't see that. The first time, actually, I think they got to see me live was my hometown is in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, more or less where all the Great Lakes come together, about 5.5 hours straight north of Detroit. And we happened to play that year, I think it was December 23rd in Detroit. So my parents and brother drove down from the Sioux and watched that game. And then after the game, I drove home, spent a couple of days at home, got some more clothes and stuff because I'd been called up while I was on the road. And actually flew out 8 o'clock Christmas morning to get back to Hartford for a game on the 26th.
So their first game was on the ice in Detroit against the Red Wings.
Yes.
So obviously that's a good place to watch a hockey game in a city like that. To see their son out there playing the Red Wings must have been pretty cool too.
Yeah, no, my parents were always involved in my career, but respectfully involved. I had a tough decision at 16, turning 17, whether I was going to play college hockey or junior hockey, and Cornell University wanted me to go play there, and I was strongly leaning towards doing that. And last minute, the junior team recruited me and sat down with my parents, and they said, "Really, what do you want to do?" They gave me the opportunity to make that decision. I decided to play junior, and a year and a half later, I'm playing in the NHL. And there they are sitting in the stands watching me play after all the outdoor rinks and drives to the practice facilities and tournaments all over the place. So it was an exciting moment for the entire family.
You talk about the outdoor rinks and you take me back to when you were younger, and every hockey player seems to have these stories about how they first started playing hockey. Why hockey for you? And was everybody playing it?
You may have saw at the press conference just that little photo of me with my bent ankles in, and that was taken when I was 3 years old. My mother, who had a friend, had a son both my age and one that was a year older, went with her friend because her friend was going to register her older boy to play. So she signed her older boy up, and the guy said, "What about the other two?" And Mom said, "No, he's only he's only 2.5, 3. He can't." And he said, "Well, we got 2 spots left." So my mom ended up signing us up. And I was 3 years old when I first started playing. So I'm not sure I had any say in really what was going on then. But growing up in Northern Ontario with all the snow we get, you skated on outdoor rinks, you played street hockey. My brother had a learning disability, so we had some issues there with the family when he was younger, and then went on to be a really well-known athlete in Special Olympics. But that's kind of how I got my start. But even with everything going on with my brother, my parents still managed to make sure that I got to my tournaments and my practices and had every opportunity to be successful as well, and it worked out well.
Yeah, because back then, well, anywhere, I mean, ice time, hockey equipment, you're growing out of it really fast. So, I mean, I would imagine that, they're bankrolling your career at that point, too, because I know that hockey parents, it's expensive.
Well, yeah, it's probably, my dad was a steel worker, worked in the plant 41 years, and so in a good year, we might have had $500 in the bank at the end of the year. It wasn't something that had an extravagant lifestyle. And I think probably one of the most disappointed I've seen him was when I got a brand new pair of skates in September, and I grew so much that I needed a new pair in January.
Wow.
The next one was well enough that I had to wear a couple pairs of socks, and they were going to last me a little while. But it's certainly not a cheap sport to play. But they always made sure that I had that opportunity and the equipment I needed to be successful.
When Gordie Howe passed, I noticed a nice article you wrote. Everybody kind of chimed in on Gordie. You had a chance to play with his sons in Hartford.
Yep, Mark and Marty.
Mark and Marty, and then you had a chance to actually get on the ice with Gordie.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about when you're on the ice, sharing the ice with a legend like that.
Well, anytime you get to watch a guy like that growing up and what he meant to the game of hockey and what he accomplished, and then all of a sudden you're on the ice skating with him. It was one of the first times I'm skating and I'm going down the ice, and all of a sudden my right arm starts just kind of going around in the air, and I can't control it. And I'm looking over, and behind me is Gordie, and Gordie had taken the blade of his stick, turned it upside down, and jammed it in my glove. And he was just moving my arm around wherever he wanted it to go. And I looked at him and he said, "Kid, that's why you take the laces out of your glove." And I said, "Yes, sir, Mr. Howe." I went over to the boards, I took the laces out of my gloves, and I came back and played with him the rest of the day.
A guy like that, he probably could teach you so many tricks.
Yeah. And he was known for that too, right? He was just a tough guy. There was a charity game actually in Hartford one year, and all of a sudden Alan Thicke comes in the locker room and his nose is all busted up, and I guess he was in the corner with Gordie and caught a Gordie Howe elbow in a charity game. So pretty competitive guy.
Gordie was one of those guys who was always gracious and appreciative of the fans, and it feels like that's kind of how you were throughout your career. You're such a strong character guy. How much did you appreciate sticking around and signing autographs whenever you had a chance?
No, I enjoyed doing that. There was, again, last night at the beer hall, we did a lot of that last night for our fans. It was great. You get a chance to sort of meet them and talk to them, and it's a little bit different. I think with the professionals, when they're buying them and they're getting the autographs and selling them, that's a little disappointing. But for the genuine fan that really wants that for themselves, I've driven for hours to go see sick kids and do things. I think it's important. My wife and I had a family night out charity that we started in Pittsburgh with Pittsburgh Children's Hospital, and did it again with Duke's Children's Hospital. We took a sick child and gave them a night out at a game, and limo ride for the patient, whoever the patient wanted to bring, mother or father or siblings, doctors, nurses, you name it, dinner at the restaurant. I get to watch the game from a suite, flowers for all the ladies, mascot come by, say hello, post game. They got to come down outside the locker room, get autographs, sign whatever they wanted, pictures taken, and then limo at home. To me, it's important. These people are spending hard-earned money to come and watch you play and support you, and I think it's important to give back to them as well.
When you talk about, it seems like a lot of pro athletes, you say you recognize the professional autograph seekers. Is that something you just develop over the years where you're like, I got your number, buddy?
Well, they're usually waiting outside the hotel or outside the airport, and those are a little bit different kind of thing. But I guess they can make some good money doing it. So they're finding a way to make some money.
When you who'd you idolize when you were growing up?
So I'm from Sault Ste. Marie. At that time, Phil Esposito was kind of a big player in the NHL with the Boston Bruins. So he was a guy. I enjoyed watching Davey Keon. And actually, fast forward years later, when I was 18, my first roommate was Dave Keon at the age of 41, and just a great mentor and teacher for me in the early years of my career, and a friendship that we still maintain today, which is great.
No, that's quite a difference, though, huh? A guy like that probably taught you something in a hurry.
Well, it's funny because you fast forward, and I was 41 when I retired, so I wouldn't have thought that at 18, but I understand a lot more what Davey was going through at 41.
What about let's talk a little bit about the Stanley Cup years with Pittsburgh. What was it like for you playing with Lemieux and Jagr and just that team you guys had?
Yeah, it was kind of a whirlwind. My wife and I had our first child, Caitlin, on February 5th, and my wife actually had a C-section, and it wasn't like 4 weeks later when I got traded to Pittsburgh. And in our business, see you later, honey. Out the door you go the next morning, and they got to get the house ready. But they came down, and the three of us were living in a one-bedroom apartment across from the rink. For the next 3 months, we went through that journey. But the hockey team was so talented. I think Jaromir Jagr was our fourth line winger, that first Cup team. You had Mario Lemieux and Mark Recchi and Paul Coffey and Kevin Stevens and Joe Mullen. Was a lot of big names. Brian Trottier was on that team, Larry Murphy. So a lot of great players. And, we just started coming together and things started going our direction. And when you're able to finally do that, I think that's the ultimate as a hockey player, the chance to hoist the Stanley Cup. And it's a moment you never forget. And, the slogan goes, you walk together forever once you accomplish that. And it was great.
When you're in a group like that, was there you got to have a good mix of players. Was there a clown on that team or someone that was always a joker that was, keeping you guys, light?
Yeah, probably my good friend and the guy I got traded with was Ulf Samuelsson. Ulfie was probably one of the most fierce competitors on the ice, but one of the biggest pranksters off the ice. And, he was always good at stirring things up in the locker room or on the bus or on the road stuff and keeping guys light at the right time. So you have to have that mix. You got to have, talented players. You got to have role players. You got to have guys that are willing to block shots and do the dirty work, and everybody accepting their role and, putting the team first is why you have the opportunity to win championships. And we were fortunate in Pittsburgh that we had that.
Did Ulf ever get you?
He tried a couple times when he got traded later, but he would do his pranks, and I'd look at him and say, "Alfie, really?" And he'd go, "Yeah, we actually roomed together for about 12 years. So it was like living with my wife on the road. We knew each other pretty good."
Well, Lemieux comes across as a guy who was a hard worker and not a diva type, so to speak. What was it like with him?
It was great. Mario's just a kind of a quiet, low-key kind of guy. He doesn't really look for the limelight and stuff. But, you watch him play in the games, and people are so impressed with what he can do. For me, the amazing part was you get to practice with him every day. And some of the things he did in practice, he literally sat there and went, "Did I just see that? Did he actually really do that?" Like, he was so talented. He did things that, other players like myself didn't even think about trying. And, not only was he a great player off the ice, a fantastic person off the ice. Like I said, just kind of low key, easygoing, and a guy of his stature could have had a big ego and been demanding, but that was never Mario. He was always about the team and a big part of why we got to win back-to-back cups. He
was a big dude too. Like, do you ever notice the guys trying to challenge him early on or anything like that? Like, is that kind of a thing in hockey where,
Yeah, no, they would do that, and the rules were a little bit different back then too. I think the biggest thing that was tough for him, and it probably caused a lot of his back issues, was he was so big and so strong that the only sometimes guys could slow him down was almost to climb on his back kind of thing and hook him and hold him, and had to fight through a lot of that stuff, and it probably led to some of his back issues in his career. But he was a dominant player, and the amazing thing for me was most guys with their stick, they're strong in next to their body, and when they extend their arms, they kind of lose that strength, and he was just as strong extended as he was inside. So it was a pretty special player to watch and be a part of.
Well, I mean, you set up, I'm sure, many of his goals, and Jagr as well, and 1,800 assists, second only to Wayne Gretzky. When you think of that, and I don't want to get too far into your stats, but that stat alone that's rare air. I mean, that's pretty cool. Do you ever stop and allow yourself to think about what you accomplished?
Yeah. Ever since I was a young kid, my dad always, kind of pushed that it wasn't just scoring goals, it was almost making plays and setting guys up. And that was something I took a lot of pride in, my ability to move the puck to the right guy and give him the opportunity to score. And I was fortunate over my career to play with a lot of great goal scorers. I did have the chance the one year, they didn't put us together till November, but I actually played on a line with Jaromir Jagr and Mario Lemieux. And people said, "That must have been the greatest." And I said, "Yeah, but it was also, I never worked so hard in my life because I got more sticks in my back end as they were pushing me to do the back checking work." But a lot of fun playing with those two guys. I mean, there's sometimes I sit there and shake my head. I mean, I think I was very lucky and very fortunate to play a long time. I was very fortunate to play with a lot of good players, and at the end of the day, that allows you to have some pretty good numbers.
Who was the toughest goalie or two that you faced?
I always thought Patrick Waugh was one of the hardest. Marty Brodeur was good, great hockey sense. Really could anticipate the play when you're coming at him. Grant Fuhr in the Oiler days was another good one. So certainly a lot of them over the years.
Yeah, there's three big ones there. Yeah. How about as far as you always seem to avoid the hits, and I know we had a little chat about fighting, but do you remember a guy who hit you the hardest where you would just like? I mean, I know Scott Stevens got you once pretty good, but
yeah, Stevens was probably one of the more physical guys in the game. The guy maybe under the radar was a guy like Brian Trottier. He was just such a solid, thick guy, and when you ran into him, you ran into somebody pretty solid. Rafi Torres was another guy kind of built with that. I think he was one of the first guys to almost do that reverse hit. So if you're playing this game and playing it for a long time, there's a lot of guys that are going to hit you hard.
Yeah, but for you played 23 years. I mean, you avoided a lot of injuries, and I mean, there's a skill in that too.
Yeah,
staying alive out there.
Yeah, no, that's part of it too, right? And you can stay away from the contact, but that's not going to help you get the job done. So the trick is getting into the tough areas, getting into those hard areas that are going to get you the rewards you want, the goals and assists and wins, and doing it while trying to maintain as safe situation as possible.
And fighting for you was like you stayed away from it as much as you could, right? So do you remember ever getting into a fight? Was it early in your career or?
Yeah, no. Early in my career, I had some fights. Tiger Williams, I think Willie Plett, and then I said to myself, do you want to play this game a long time or do you want to fight? So I decided to do less fighting and a little more playing. So maybe a handful of fights over my career, definitely less than 10, I'm sure, in my NHL career, but yeah. A lot of games played.
Listen, you bring up Tiger Williams, and I grew up in Detroit watching the Wings and the Leafs, and he was always such a troublemaker. And but I mean, like, do you feel like I feel like? Did he come after you because you're Ron Francis and you're scoring goals, you're assisting, you're too much offense for those guys to handle, and he wanted to give you something, or like because Ron Francis getting involved with Tiger Williams doesn't make any sense to me.
No, but and that's what Tiger was good at, right? He was not only a good player, but he was good at getting under the other team's skin, and certainly he got under mine that night. And it's funny because we got to play years later together in Hartford, and really enjoyed him. Good guy, big personality, and it's funny how in hockey that happens, right? You could be battling with a guy one night, he gets traded, the next day like you're like best friends on the team and working together. So I enjoyed my time with Tiger.
Yeah, that's when you look back at those days, and I see the helmet rule in the NHL when they made the guys put the helmets on, except for the guys that were grandfathered in, was like in the late 70s, like 79. You got to start playing shortly after that. When you were on the ice, did you see guys like Ron Duguay running around with skating around with the hair flowing and all that?
Yeah, no, it's you look back on it and you kind of shake your head. The guys actually did that, right? So when I started, the helmets were mandatory. Unfortunately, in my first year, I got hit in my left eye with a slap shot, and I almost lost my eye. I spent a week with both eyes patched in the hospital, and the doctor's exact words when he took off the patches where he said, God must have been on your side because normally they don't turn out this well. He said, but if you get hit again, you're going to lose your eye.
Wow.
So I actually put on a shield, and it was probably one of the first guys that wore a shield, my entire career from when I was 18 to when I was 41. And now, that's something mandatory for guys coming in. You look back and think, why wouldn't more guys do that, right? It's a piece of apparatus that's going to save your eyesight potentially. So, it's a tough sport. A lot of crazy things happen, and I guess I'm just fortunate over the years that I had my helmet, I had my shield, and for the most part came through it okay.
Man, yeah, people don't realize that, and there's great stories of guys getting stitched up and coming right back out. And do you ever have anything like that where we had to get off the ice, get stitched up, and come out?
Yeah, so normally in the world of hockey, they have the doctor's office right next to the bench. So if that happens, they wheel you in there. If he's in a good mood, you might get the Novocaine and take a little more time to do the stitches. If you're in a hurry to get back out there for a power play or something, the stitches might go in without the Novocaine.
Oh, man.
But yeah, I was trying to calculate one day, and I think I'm well over 300 stitches in my career. So unfortunately, it's part of the business.
Well, I don't know how the goalies avoided back in the day. You see those old pictures of the goalies wearing or playing without the masks.
Yeah.
And it's like, it just doesn't seem natural that, back in the day, like, why wouldn't you as a goalie put a mask on right away? And those old shots of those guys, it's really wild.
Yeah, I think the one thing was back in the day that there wasn't as much in regards to the curves on the stick, and they couldn't get up as maybe as quickly, but certainly the style the goaltenders played, a lot of times they sprawled across the ice, so their face was down at ice level and put them in danger. I think it was only a matter of time, and thank God somebody did come up with the idea to design a mask to help protect those face. And I still remember Jerry Cheever's mask with all the different kind of stitch marks all over it, where he would have been hit and cut and over his career. So thank God they got better protection for the goaltenders.
Well, when you wrapped it up, when did you realize it was over for you? Was it sometime on the ice? Was it sometime at practice?
No, I think heading into my last season, I kind of figured this was going to be it for me. I was going to be 41. It was time to try and do something else with my life. I had actually gone to my stick company, Easton, at the time, and I asked them, rather than pay me the endorsement deal or charge the team for the price for the sticks, could they just change the sticks? And at the time they were all yellow, and I had them put red in mine where the yellow was, and then I had them number the back. So I had 250 sticks. And I used those sticks over my last season. I used one in the first period, one in the second, one in the third. And what I tried to do with those sticks was, as I traveled around the country, I might have been in Toronto, and I had good friends that I grew up with that were fans of my career. I'd use those sticks, and then after the game, I'd sign the sticks to them, and I'd give them to them after the game. And I've still got a bunch sitting in my basement, but I thought that was. I guess I knew it was time to move on, and that was going to be my last year, and it was a way just sort of for me to kind of do something to say thank you to a lot of people that were influential in my career.
Well, that's a great idea. Did you get that from anywhere else, or did you just come up with it?
No, I just came up with that, and then the other thing I did was my last game. I had 3 jerseys made up, and on the inside of the jerseys, I had engraved to each of my kids. To my daughter Caitlin, love Dad. To my son Michael, to my son Connor, love Dad. And I wore a jersey for each period of my last game played, and gave those to my kids. So my youngest son chimes up and says, "So I was the one that really got the last jersey you wore, Dad, right?" So, but and the kids still have those jerseys, so it's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to ask you about Carolina, because you went from Hartford to Pittsburgh, and then Hartford moves to Carolina. And the Sonics fans here know what it's like to have your team ripped away from you. I'm sure there's some compassion for you, even though it was years after that Hartford was moving out of that city. Can you talk a little bit about that, and how did that affect you at all after all those years you played there?
Yeah, I more or less felt like I kind of grew up there. I turned pro at 18, and then I got traded at 28. I wasn't there a couple years later when the franchise left, but I know how passionate those fans were about their team, and to see it leave was certainly tough. And you still talk to people in that market today, and they're still disappointed they don't have that team. And it worked out for me in the sense that I got traded to Pittsburgh, and then Pittsburgh was kind of hitting some tough financial times. I was going to be a free agent for the first time in my career at the ripe young age of 35, and I had 3 or 4 teams interested at that summer of trying to sign me. And to me, when I looked at it, Carolina was interesting from a lot of fronts. And the Hartford thing was kind of in the back burner for me, but the interesting thing was it was a new market. It was a chance to kind of sell the game again. Everything I'd read about the city and the area was up and coming, and it was a great place to raise your family. And at the time I had 3 young kids. So, a lot of that factored into my decision making. Probably a little bit more than the Hartford aspect, but certainly it was great to get back in the organization. And they still had some familiar faces, equipment guys, radio guys that had worked with me in Hartford, so it was great to see them again.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's great to have you in Seattle, great to have you on the show here, and I think they're really lucky to have a guy your pedigree and your caliber, man. That's really cool, and I think that fans are really looking forward to it.
I appreciate that, Paul. I'm really excited about the opportunity. I said yesterday, I love this ownership group. I love Todd Leiweke and the vision, what they want to do. Everything I've heard about the city of Seattle, it's absolutely fantastic. I can't wait to get entrenched in the community, and I think this is going to be a destination a lot of players want to play, and hopefully we can put those players in the right spots and build a championship team here.
All right, they're looking forward to it. Thanks, Ron. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure, Paul.
All
Thanks.
right.